Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. On today's episode, we will be discussing the 12-team bracket for the college football playoffs. The playoffs are set, and we will also be talking about who got snubbed and did the college football playoff committee make the right decision. I'm Stephen Conner, and you're tuning into the Stephen Conner Show. What's going on, everybody? Before we get started, please make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and share. Also, hit the post notification bell so you can get notified whenever we upload a video. As you can see, today we'll be talking about the college football playoff and the final rankings that came out. I'll be breaking down the rankings, I'll be breaking down the matchups, and then at the end, we will discuss if the committee got it right or not. Because as we all know, one team who I feel like should have been in this playoff got out. And they were trying to spin the narrative that Miami is the reason why, but I can understand Miami getting in. However, it's one team I cannot understand that's getting in. And we'll get into it. So this weekend was championship weekend for college football as we headed into the postseason, bowl season, and we're getting ready for the college football playoff. They announced the 12 teams, and the teams are: the number one seed is the Indiana Hoosiers, who beat Ohio State in a thrilling game for the Big Ten title game. The number two team, and who also gets a bye, is because they changed it. The conference champions don't automatically get a bye. They get in the playoff, but they don't get a bye anymore. So Ohio State is number two in the country. Then you have Georgia at number three and Texas Tech, who are number four. Now, I kind of thought for some reason, I know the committee said they're not going to punish you for losing in the conference championship game, which we'll get back to in a little bit, talking about. However, I thought Ohio State was going to at least drop to 3 or 4. At least 3. I thought Georgia was going to jump them for some reason. But it's fine. Honestly, at the end of the day, it's fine, and it's fine. It's not that big of a deal. This is not the issue. I'm fine with the top 4. I'm perfectly content with the rankings because Ohio State, honestly, to me, is still the second best team in the country. And if a couple of things went different, they could have won, or at least they would have been in overtime. If that kicker didn't miss that kick, they would have at least went into overtime, and who knows what would have happened in overtime. But shout out to Indiana. Shout out to their head coach. They got the Heisman. Two-year turnaround. This is the best turnaround in college football history. I'm going to say it now. And if they win the national title, that's something. They just got out of this year being the losing program in college football history. So this is really good for them. They hadn't beat Ohio State in like the last 30 times they played. Ohio State have won. They haven't won the Big Ten title outright since I believe the 60s possibly. It's been a while, 67. It's been a while for Indiana. So to see Indiana is pretty good. Georgia's going to be a problem, but I could make a separate video about that. I wouldn't want to see Georgia in the playoffs. And Texas Tech has been good all year. Next up, we're going to move on to the matchups. Now, those 4 teams get a bye. Next teams up, we have the 5 seed, which is Oregon, who will be playing James Madison University in the first round in Eugene, Oregon. That will be December 20th. Then we have a rematch in Norman. We have Oklahoma versus Alabama. And Oklahoma is the reason why Alabama, was on the bubble for so long, because Oklahoma dismantled Alabama. Then we have Tulane versus Ole Miss, a rematch. Now, Tulane versus Ole Miss was a blowout at the beginning of this year. I still think it might end up being a blowout, but it still might be closer than what people think, especially because of how the ACC title game went. Duke got their butts kicked earlier this year by Virginia, and they ended up winning. So, same thing. Georgia lost to Alabama earlier this year, and then they ended up winning. And then last but not least, we have Miami and Texas A&M. Texas A&M still get to host a game after losing their regular season finale. And Ole Miss didn't get punished for Lane Kiffin leaving because, that whole controversy with Lane Kiffin, will he stay or will he go? He handled it very unprofessionally. And they told him, you're not coaching in the playoff. Simple as that. So those are the teams in the playoffs. We have two group of five teams. I see people outraged about that. I'm fine with it personally. I like it. I think it's okay. I think it's fine. That's not what my problem is. We're going to get into my problem right now. And my problem is with Alabama getting in. Now, and Notre Dame not getting in. Now, before these rankings came out, Notre Dame had two losses. They lost to Texas A&M and they lost to the University of Miami. They lost to those two teams at the beginning of the year. Ever since then, Notre Dame has been on a winning streak. Notre Dame has been ranked ahead of Miami because Miami couldn't handle business against SMU in Louisville. Notre Dame has been ranked ahead of them every single college football playoff ranking that has come out by the committee, including the last one on Tuesday. Notre Dame did not play on Saturday. Miami did not play on Saturday. The problem here is, how in the world did Miami jump Notre Dame by sitting them on the couch? And they're saying because BYU lost and BYU got pushed back a spot, and because of that, that's when they had to look at the head-to-head matchup, and Miami beat Notre Dame. So then the head-to-head, that's how you figure it out. That's correct. I agree. I get that. My thing is, if you were going to jump there, we knew BYU wasn't going to beat Texas Tech, but if you knew, if you really felt, if you was going to do it, you should have been did that. They had the same record and everything. You should have been did that. You could have at least did it on Tuesday, and it would have came as a surprise, as a shock to college football fans and to Notre Dame fans and to the players at Notre Dame. They should have gotten in. You say you don't want to punish people for how they played during the conference championship weekend if they lost, the losers, but you kicked BYU out the playoff, who only had two losses, but you put Alabama in. The problem with me isn't that Miami got in. The problem with me isn't that we got two group of five teams. I agree with the two group of fives because James Madison, they deserve to get in. Tulane, they deserve to get in over a 7-5 ACC champion. They deserve to get in. It could have been a scenario where the ACC had no representation at all because Duke won. I agree with the committee's decision. I wholeheartedly agree with that decision. Still, at the end of the day, Alabama had 3 losses. They lost to an awful Florida State team. And they didn't just lose, they got melly-rocked on every block. They lost to Oklahoma. And then they lost to Georgia. They got blown out by Georgia. They had -3 rushing yards against Georgia, and they didn't move a single spot down. What sense does that make? Why are we punishing Notre Dame? They play. They did everything they were supposed. They had their destiny in their hands, and the committee has made it seem like Notre Dame was fine. They were cool. It was whatever until Sunday. Sunday hit, then all of a sudden they hit the reset. They switched up on them, and you just can't do that. And Notre Dame withdrew from bowl game consideration. I would have too, because this makes sense. They played politics here. They played politics and let Alabama into the college football playoff, and Alabama had no reason being in the college football playoff, especially after -3 rushing yards and getting blown out by Georgia in the SEC title game. Where's BYU? They got punished. They wasn't even the first team out. They was the second team out. They got absolutely demolished by Texas Tech. But you didn't let them in. They only had 2 losses. That would have made more sense than you put Alabama in. But Notre Dame got snubbed, and that's the end of the story. They got snubbed, and I wholeheartedly believe Notre Dame should have got in. I do not think Alabama deserved a spot in the playoffs. You could come in the comment section. You can explain to me why Alabama should be in the playoff. You can explain to me why. But this team did not deserve to be in the playoff. They really did not. And I wholeheartedly believe that. But the committee done had controversies for years. Like last year, should they let SMU in or Alabama? And I said, no, they shouldn't have let Alabama in. And they did, and they put SMU in. 2020, I thought Texas and A&M should have gotten in the 14 playoff that year over Notre Dame. Because they only lost one game, and that was to Alabama, and they were a completely different team since they had played Alabama. So Notre Dame has got favored by this in the past. And the most infamous one, 2023, Florida State, when Florida State didn't get in over Alabama, which I thought was the right decision to leave Florida State out the playoff. And I only say that because Alabama beat the number one team in the country who hadn't been beaten in like 2 years at that point, Georgia. They went and they beat them. And Texas beat Alabama. So you were going to let Alabama in, but you couldn't let Alabama in without letting the team who beat them in, which is Texas. So Texas got brought up into the playoff because Alabama beat Georgia. And at the time, and to this day, I still think that was the right decision. However, I understand they went and beat Georgia's in Athens this year, and Georgia hadn't lost at Athens in a very long time. However, and I understand the not wanting to punish. That made sense with Ohio State. That made 100% sense to me. I get it. I understand. That's fine. That is totally, completely fine with me. However, Notre Dame should have got that last spot. Miami should have got in automatically because they beat Notre Dame. That's where my head is. I think Miami is not the issue at all here. Miami should have gotten in because they beat Notre Dame. However, Alabama shouldn't have got in simply because they have 3 losses and they got absolutely exposed. They got exposed. They -3 rushing yards, 28-7. That game wasn't even close. They got out physical. They got outclassed. They got out hustled. They got out everything in that game. And you put them in the playoff. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. These championship games got to have some type of consequences to them. Why did BYU have to suffer? Why did BYU have to suffer? If you was going to snub Notre Dame for anyone, you could at least did it for BYU, maybe. BYU only 2 losses. Why not do it for BYU? This is the things that I don't understand about the college football committee. I really don't. I don't understand, and I never will fully understand. Because this is ridiculous, and this is the problem with the committee, and this bias towards the SEC is outrageous. The SEC hasn't won a national title in like 2 seasons. It's the Big Ten. Once again, the Big Ten has the number 1 overall seed in the tournament. They have the top 1, 2, yeah. They got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep. Yeah, they got 1, 2, 5. Yep, they got 3. They got 3 teams in here. The SEC, once again, of course, has more teams because SEC bias. But still, but most of the SEC teams who are in here deserve to be in here, except for Alabama, so I'm not going to do that. But other than that, that's how I feel about the whole Notre Dame situation. I feel like Notre Dame got snubbed. I feel like Alabama should not be in the playoff, and I feel like it should be Notre Dame. I'm not mad at Miami. Miami should have gotten in. After that weekend, BYU lost and Alabama lost. Just slide them two up. They've been synonymous with each other all year, to us at least. Now, according to the College Football Committee, because they keep changing what they do every week. But now, all of a sudden, that head-to-head matchup mattered. And like I said, if you were going to do anything, you should have flipped them on Tuesday. But you waited till Sunday when neither one of them played, and it made no sense. And then you still left Notre Dame out for Alabama, who got demolished in the championship game. BYU got demolished. Where are they at? Home. They're not even going to the playoff. So Alabama should have got sent home. Should have got sent packing because they do not deserve to be in the college football playoff. Nah. I think Tulane, James Madison, I think they deserve to be in the playoff. I wholeheartedly do. It does not matter if they lose 77-0, 89-0, 950-2. It does not matter what the final score of both of those games are. It does not matter at all wholeheartedly. You want to know why? Because they earned it. They handled business. They did what they were supposed to do. They deserve to be there. I was for 2 group of 5 teams getting in. I really was. I said Duke shouldn't get in. I said 2 non-group of 5 teams should get in. I said 2 group of, yep, I did. I said that. I did that. I did say that. And I 100% support them too. Tulane. I support Tulane. I support James Madison being in this playoff because, once again, they deserve it and they earned their spot. Alabama did not earn their spot. Alrighty, well, you let me know your opinions down below on whether or not you agree with me or not. We will have 2 more videos coming out this week. So, yeah. Alright, y'all. Until next time, Stephen Counter out. Peace.